My name is Paula Barbeito. I am from Slow Food, and I want to welcome you all to this Terra Madre Forum. This virtual event is part of a series of contents that Slow Food has developed to claim the fundamental role of water in our ecosystems, our food and our livelihoods. In particular, this is the second episode of Rivers Connect the World, in which we will discover the Danube. For this webinar, your video camera and microphones will be muted, but you can send your questions to the chat and we will discuss them. We don't have interpretation available for you today. This webinar will be held only in English. Today, we are very, very lucky to have the excellent audience of speakers who will share their experiences and knowledge about the Danube. I would like now to introduce you to Gary Granada, who will moderate this webinar. Gary is the creator of Vanishing Foodways, an ongoing adventure to explore, collect, and share stories of food systems along the river basins of the world. Gary is the former chair of Slow Food New Orleans and now resides at Granada Goods, a permaculture food forest near his hometown of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Welcome, Gary. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Oops, we're at the end. My bad. Very happy to be here and do the next installment of Rivers Connect the World. Today we're going to be the Danube, from the Black Forest to the Black Sea. I would like to welcome our panelists and let them introduce themselves. Anka, please introduce yourself and tell us where you are and what you do for a living. Unmute.
Yes, Anka, you have to unmute and to
Yes, now it's okay. Okay, so my name is Anka Simeon. Now I living in Tulcea. I was born and lived till age 40 in Saint George, Sfântu Gheorghe in Romania. And after that, I live to high school and university in Tulcea and in Brașov.
Okay.
10 years ago, I have an opportunity to go back in my village and to start working in a social community about the effect of the sturgeon ban. It was like a good opportunity for me to know this issue that was affected my family directly. That in present, my father and my brother, they are fishermen. My father was fisherman on sturgeon fish. And when the ban comes, they lose a kind of incomes and have to start over on fishing.
Yeah.
So it was very pleasant. And after 1 year that I work on this project, it was finished, and I was back in Tulcea and start working in fishery industry with my cousin.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
fishing in the Black Sea, in Danube River, and make some products, which
Great.
which we shipped from Danube Delta.
All right. And our other two panelists, Eugenio and Tiberio, if you'd please turn your cameras back on so we can see you. We're waiting for Eugenio Bera and Tiberio Kazochik. I think I came close.
Yes. Wait, Gary, I think they already have the video cameras on.
Oh, they do. I'm just not seeing. Okay, Eugenio, if you would
Yes.
please introduce yourself and your work. I'm just not seeing you.
Yeah,
Okay,
good
you have to go on
morning.
sorry, Eugenio, because I think it's important to create the flow of the conversation. Gary, you have to go on the top right on your screen that you can see the view, and then you have to select.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Galleria.
Got
Okay.
it.
Gallery.
All right.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Eugenio. I'm originally from Milano, Italy, but since 2014 I'm based in Belgrade. So along this river, along the Danube, and I work for a cooperative tour operator, an Italian tour operator, Viaggi e Miraggi, that deals with sustainable tourism all over the world. And I've been designing and organizing sustainable tourism tours for Viaggi e Miraggi for almost 10 years. Among these tours here in Southeast Europe, I also organize slow cruises, linking food, culture, and history along the middle and lower course of the Danube. Yeah. This is the link of our cooperative.
And we're going to be talking more about these tours, and I can't wait to take later in this discussion, and I can't wait to take these tours. Tiberio, please introduce yourself.
Hi everybody. I'm glad that we are discussing all around the Danube and the Delta. Well, I have many hats in a way, but I'm here with you in this debate and discussion because I'm a member of an association which is working in the Danube Delta in order to design and put in practice solutions to various issues of the local people. So I'm a member of the association Ivan Pazaikin Mila 23 or Mile 23. It's a village in the Danube Delta. I also am working in a nature conservation project in county of Tulcea. And I was also involved in many other slow food projects. I am a member of the organization and activist from 2007 onwards.
Great. So now let's explore the Danube. And I failed to mention the screen you're looking at right now, the yellow in the center of the screen, that is the Danube Delta and its entire drainage basin. So let's just get some facts about the Danube. And my screen is locked. It's not, there we go. So here's the Danube. It starts in the German's Black Forest and flows through 10 countries. It also drains an additional 9 countries, making it the world's most international river. It drains 4 mountain ranges, and its delta empties into the Black Sea, most of which of the delta is in Romania, with just a little bit in the Ukraine. And it also flows through nearly 99 cities, including 4 capitals, which is also a record in the world. And I want to pose to the panel the challenges of managing a river that flows through so many countries, cities. You know, when it flows through a city, you think it's your river, but then you completely ignore the next community downriver. What are some of those challenges, panel? Anybody feel like chiming in on that?
Well, depends. So Danube Delta is at the end of the flowing of the river, and the challenge is to make the context in such a way that people could live sustainable there, use resources, and be in a way or another in the modern times, like being in the today world. This is a very big challenge because there is a pressure between the developmental approach and the nature conservation approach. It is not like a battle or a clash, but this is the challenge for the Danube Delta at the end, and it affects mostly, as I can say, the laymen, the simple people. Those are left out of some of the ways in which the things are happening in the Danube Delta.
And I, again, living in New Orleans for 20 years, I saw that firsthand. People have always had this view of deltas, swamp, those nasty regions, when they are the regions of fertility where fresh water meets salt water is where about 95% of all life on the planet arises. And it's very hard to get that conversation going upriver that the impacts happening upriver have devastating impacts downriver, which will eventually impact upriver. And we're going to continue this conversation as we go through it. So let's start at the upper river. So now we're coming out of the Black Forest and Germany and into Austria, where we're coming out of the Alps. You have these beautiful gorges, castles, and again, the Danube was the northernmost border of the Roman Empire. It's now a pristine wine region. And slow food has played a big role in bringing back, I'll butcher this name, the Rotel Wittliner, which is actually a wine, a grape that dates back to Roman times. But then as viticulture or wine culture started becoming more popular, industrialized in the 1900s, this grape did not adapt well to agriculture, to chemicals and having large vineyards, and almost was lost until the work of slow food helped actually bring this wine back. Now we get into the middle area, a famous region called the Iron Gates. And Eugenio, I know you take tours through here. So talk about this region of the Delta, of the Danube, and some of the history of this region.
Yes, this is, to me, alongside with the Delta, obviously, but these Iron's Gate, these gorges, are probably the most beautiful part of this mighty river. This is where the Danube finds a way to cross the Carpathian mountains. We are at the border between Serbia and Romania, and was always a very important region. Firstly, because it was constantly a sort of a border, was the Roman limes, the Roman border, and also today, the Iron's Gate, you can see the famous Tabula Traiana, this Roman memorial plaque commemorating the building of the Romans road by Traiano. And after more than 1,000 years became the border between Austrians and the Ottomans, and also was very linked with fishing, because along the these banks, not only here at the Iron's Gate, but also another example is here with, very close to Belgrade, flourished probably the most developed Mesolithic and Neolithic cultures. The culture of Vincia, the one here close to Belgrade, is famous also because it's considered the first agrarian society in Central and Eastern Europe. At the Iron's Gate flourished another Mesolithic culture called the culture of Lepenskivir. And you can see the symbol of this culture at the center of the pictures you are showing. These human fishing-like figurines were founded inside the buildings of these settlements along the banks of the river. And what tell us these figurines? The strong importance of the fishing for these people. And the fishing was so important that these inhabitants became semi-sedentary, first of all. And also from, let's say, a economic point of view, the fish entered the domain of ideology and the cosmogony, because it seems that these figurines were also connected with death and life, and so with the cosmogony of these cultures.
It's interesting. Again, as we explore many rivers, the connection of these indigenous older cultures and how the fish were revered as part of their life. You know, it's very similar to some of the stories we've collected with salmon in the Pacific Northwest. And Anka, now we're down into your part of the world, down in the Delta, that I have to say, even though I've never been there, I really connect with, because this reminds me so much of Southern Louisiana. Please talk about your home.
Oh, my home, it's a very beautiful place. It's my village. It's Sfântu Gheorghe. It's in the end of Romanian and in the border with Black Sea. If you cross the Black Sea, you go in Georgia. So in this moment, my village have around 700 people now who lives in the winter time, and in the summer, because of the people that came for the tourism, it's around 2,000 people in the full season we speak. So it's a very important fluctual of the people. My village, it was before the sturgeon ban start. It was most of the men was fishing on the sturgeon. When bans comes, this will stop. One of part just continues to fishing. Most of them in the spring on the season of the herring Danube river, and the rest start to make like exchange activity and start to work on tourism.
Okay.
Now in the present, most of the houses of the villages start to become guest houses.
Okay.
And just small guest houses for 2-3 rooms, maybe 4, and start to share the fish that the men's catch. The women's prepare like traditional food to the tourists. Also, we have an just a second. Also, we have resorts and pensions and hotels.
Okay.
Not so many, but we have.
And you've mentioned the sturgeon ban a couple of times, so we're going to now talk about sturgeon and this historic fish that, I mean, even though I've never been to the Danube, I mean, growing up in the 60s and watching TV, you'd always heard about the beluga caviar.
The black,
the
black gold.
the black gold, yes. And even though you know nothing about it, if you ever watched a James Bond movie or anything, you knew about the beluga caviar.
Yes.
But and this fish migrated the entire length of the Danube, but started falling off in the 1700s. And Tiberio, talk about this this work by Dr. Antipa and his work on the sturgeon and how he was commissioned to do this.
Well, as you have said, the idea of how to manage the Danube Delta as a complex system of ways and means between nature and people began in Romania as of end of the 19th century. Grigore Antipa at that time was a scientist, a biologist, a public administrator, a public manager. He was endowed as administrator of the state fisheries, because the fisheries were a monopoly. And he studied the way the people were living, fishing, producing various fish appetizers, how the market was functioning, and he proposed solutions in terms of organizing the market, the profession, and also in terms of how the Danube Delta must be managed from hydrological point of view in order not to be overwhelmed with the mud coming with the Danube Delta. So Grigore Antipa studied that. Some solutions were proposed at that time, but along the history, the situation changed when indeed with the change of the free market regime in 1947, the industrialization and exploitation of fisheries in the Danube Delta grew large, and maybe we can see how in the 60s the fishing was happening in the Danube Delta.
Yeah, I'll skip that. But it's amazing that even in the 1800s, and I believe you said that he was commissioned by the King of Romania, says, hey, we need to take a look at this. So we think of environmentalism, conservation as being something recent. This is in the 1800s. They are already starting to see stocks fall, and something needed to be done. And as Tiberio mentioned, we have a little, oh, I'm sorry, we had one more slide here. And this kind of goes to, you know, while you see up in the upper right-hand corner, Sfântu Jorge, which is Anca's home, you see how many villages, I mean, I'm sure there are many more fishing villages in 4 different countries that relied on sturgeon, relied on fishing, that are now, as Anca said, being shifted more towards tourism. So here's a little time capsule, little 3-minute video on sturgeon fishing in the 60s.
We've come to accept nature as all-embracing and above the petty weaknesses of man. But how jealous she can be of her territory, how reluctantly the reeds and lily beds seem to give way. For this is another side of nature's beauty. Here man seems an intruder. Our location is the legendary river Danube, or rather the vast delta in Romania, where the 1,725-mile river meets the Black Sea. This watery empire, with its luxuriant vegetation more reminiscent of equatorial regions, is one of the world's finest bird sanctuaries, visited by over 300 species from pelicans to flamingos. Fish, however, don't enjoy the same protection. In fact, there's enough in the waters of the Danube's 3 arms to keep 5,000 fishermen of different types employed. Danube itself is any fisherman's idea of paradise. There are so many pike, perch, carp, and other species that sportsmen come here and cast alongside the professionals. But in the delta, one finds the really big sea fish, for which these hooks are needed. The sturgeon, for example, which swims up from the Black Sea to lay its spawn. Fishing for these is a team effort. Sturgeon are, of course, fished mainly for their caviar, or roe, although the flesh is enjoyable too. In the Black Sea alone, there are 4 types, ranging from giants 24 feet long and weighing up to 2,000 pounds, to other comparative minnows of 6 feet and a mere 30 to 40 pounds. In any case, landing them in boats of this size is a tricky and skilled business. Incidentally, the smaller the sturgeon, the greater the value of the caviar and flesh, which is not surprising when you consider that experts claim that the bigger ones may attain an age of 200 to 300 years. Known in Western Europe since the 16th century, caviar today is still a luxury. Romanian caviar being the most expensive because it is only sold fresh. In England, you can buy a whole pound for 16 guineas. In one catch, there may be a dozen or more landed. There may be only one, and naturally not every sturgeon offers up caviar, although they're certainly in the black on this occasion. From Bucharest Airport, the fresh caviar, together with other delicacies from the delta, such as frog's legs, is flown to all parts of the world to add glitter and glamour to our daily life, and giving, whether you like the stuff or not, that millionaire feeling.
Oh yes, the 60s. We all want to have that millionaire feeling that unfortunately still is today. So Anka, this was your culture, your family, going back generations fishing sturgeon. Talk more about that.
Well, that I grew up with the black caviar. Just in the morning, we want to eat or black caviar or fruit jam.
Yeah.
We prefer fruit jam with butter, but we don't have butter. My mother told me that when she was a child, they don't have a pencil to draw, so they have big boxes with black caviar, and they draw with black caviar.
Wow.
Just put it hands there and drawing. So it was another kind of life now, and I know the taste of the black caviar, the natural black caviar. It is amazing product that it should be tasted again, not like industrial catches, but maybe small catches by local community.
So you can definitely taste the difference between the wild caviar and what is now being farmed.
Yes, and I tasted also the caviar from Bulgaria, from the aquaculture. It is similar, but not the same.
Right.
The most important that we want to preserve a species like sturgeon is that we preserve, but it is that we want to know how he lives and how it is the population of this fish. So it is that someone have to go there and take this information. We can go to take this information by some machines, put it in the waters, and take the fish and put some signal on the fish and take this, what is the migration of the fish. And also it is that the fisherman goes on the Black Sea and catch, and in this case, you can see if the sturgeons, it is healthy and growing and so on. So
it's kind of interesting you're talking about. It's almost like lost information, but yet Tiberio showed manuscripts from the 1800s. And Eugenio, you were talking about in Neolithic that the people along the central Danube knew the importance of this fish and almost revered them as gods.
Yes, and now in this moment we speak the preserve the species, but the way that this fish is catch is different, like another catches, you know, and the tools and everything it's different. So uh, now in our village, it's few people that knows how to catch. In 10 years, maybe in 20 years, this information will be lost.
Right. Well, we've talked about the loss of the sturgeon. Now let's talk about why. And rivers are wild. They flood. And when rivers flood, they bring fertility. I mean, the Egyptians, Nefertiti, the goddess of fertility, when she flows, she's fertile, and rivers naturally meander and flood and create these fertile plains. But when people move to those rivers to try to control them, then their communities flood. And then all of a sudden the river becomes the enemy. People move to the rivers for their abundance. They have their settlements, but they don't know how to live with the river. So now we start trying to control. In that upper right hand, I just see that flood wall that's higher than the community. And the same thing in New Orleans. We had similar canals. It's just insanity to see flood walls where the water levels higher than the community, but this wanting to live close to the river and then needing to control the river without any thoughts to the damage that's being done. And here's a map that I've seen so many times in so many river basins, the damming of it. And when you look in the upper river, when it's coming out of the Alps, where you actually have the largest population, look at the number of dams and the amount of water that takes out of the river. And not only the water, but also the sediment that flows out of the river that builds deltas. So by damming the upper reaches, you're taking fresh water that the delta requires for its wetlands. You're also taking the sediment, because deltas are constantly growing. They're new land being built into sea, or at least they were until we started damming up and making canals. So now, and part of taming the Danube was also how to profit off of it. Oh, well, with this fast rushing water, we can make electricity out of it. And we need to control floods, which is nonsensical because part of a river's health is to naturally flood. And then the navigation and commerce to deepen and straighten. There's now even, a canal that's connecting the Rhine to the Danube. So you can go all the way from the North Sea to the Black Sea with commerce. And then the industry and agriculture that are now on its banks. And this is actually a picture of Vienna. Now, the first picture of Vienna was a nice romantic picture of Vienna. This is actually what Vienna looks like from the air. And notice how they've straightened and canalized, made canals of the river. So it no longer creates a problem. It won't flood the city. It's an enemy. We can't let it flood. We want it to get past us quickly. And then we want to be able to use it for industry and agriculture. And here you see large scale industrial monocrop agriculture right up to the banks of the river with no thoughts about the impact of that on the river and the impacts downstream, because this is chemical intensive farming and what that's going to do. And then the controversial in the 70s and the 80s, the damming of the Iron Gates, this historic pristine area that Eugenio described, has now been dammed to make it deeper and wider, so big ships and make hydroelectric energy from it. And when the first dam was constructed, there were record catches of sturgeon, and everybody said, "Oh, the dam's such a great thing because we have record catches of sturgeon for 4 or 5 years," and then it's been a complete decline since then, to where now sturgeon are on the endangered list and considered the world's most endangered fish due to habitat loss, all these hydroelectric dams, overfishing in the caviar trade, climate change. And again, fishing of wild sturgeon, the backbone of the Delta and Anka's life and her family for generations is now illegal because of all this that's happened upriver. So this is what I always, when we get into the vanishing foodways and rivers connect the world, I call this the horror story. And not only did natural abundance disappear, but actual communities disappear. Tiberio, talk about this island Atacalé that I think was around for something like 800 years, is now underwater.
Yes, so Atacalé was an island which did get underwater due to the construction of the hydroelectrical power plant at Iron Gates. And it's interesting that culturally, politically, was a reminiscence from the Ottoman Empire. There was a population of Turkish origin, Muslims. And it's interesting that going back and revisiting information about that time in the 70s, in the 20th century, it was, as you said, in some way about it was like a time capsule, because they were a little bit, well, somehow isolated. They have their own specific culture. This is very interesting. But again, here it's an example with this island which disappeared due to the needs of development. It's a tragic example of putting in balance what we have had and what we have gained. At that time, when the iron gates begin to operate, it was a project of power labeled as a great success of the socialist economies, a mark of the brotherhood between Romania and Yugoslav Republic. So a huge achievement. But indeed, when our societies develop, we are more or less trampling under feet various things like nature, heritage, and other. And you just look back afterwards and see that maybe it didn't worth the price. So when you look back 50 years after, for example, you say maybe the things could have been done different in various places, like in Danube or along the Danube. Yes.
You're talking about the loss of a fish that was in these waters for over 1 million years. I mean, it's that short-term profit, drain the swamp, which has been, a motto here in this country. Swamps are essential. Cultures are essential. So we're now in that, like I said, the horror story, but let's get into the good news, that there are people and there is work to try to mitigate some of this damage. And this is Ivan, which has been mentioned he's been mentioned briefly. You guys work with him. Tiberio, talk a little bit about Ivan and his importance with Romania and the Danube.
Well, the idea is that you have a situation, a context which is challenged in terms of sustainability, nature, living of the people there. So it's important as a solution, if you do not have a group of interest, a coalition, it's important that sometimes you have a good man, woman with a good reputation to try to gather energies and to put people together to work to find alternative solutions, not only solutions of exploiting resources locally. So Ivan is a Olympic champion. He was born in the Danube Delta. So the idea is that he brought with him a very respected capital of someone who rose from humble people from the Danube Delta, from fishermen, to become a champion. So this could be a solution for other parts. to find someone which is genuinely appreciated by all the parties involved, and to try to gather people to do things. Second, he created a not-for-profit association in order to design various projects and solutions to change the paradigm of how the things could be done and money could be gained in the Danube Delta. So this is my explanation. A person, a not-for-profit association, and then looking for issues, problems, and designing adequate solutions for people from the Danube Delta.
And I really like this. He's bringing back through his Mila 23, as you said, that is his village. It's 23 nautical miles from the Black Sea, bringing back the tradition of the wooden boats, and also doing this festival, Romania. Who would like to talk about Romania?
Yeah, well, very short, going back to the various projects which were put in practice, I was thinking that it's a matter of creating soft power. So many of the projects which were designed by the association, they were not directly giving people money or giving contracts, but there were and are projects which are creating a context, creating the soft power of the Danube Delta and the lower Danube. So the festival, it's about bringing together people and to enhance the value of the place in which it happens, the festival in Tulcea at the gates of the Danube Delta. Canotka, it's a special boat designed in order to give an instrument to consume slowly the nature by rowing, not using engine boats. Projects related with the gastronomy to make people think more about the fact they should not abide always to the push of the mass tourism and so forth. So all those ideas are put in a link and the images which I have put in the chat. And it's about creating soft power in a way in which you can a little bit make to do an approach in a way that people are interested only to develop the area from an industrial perspective. Right. But you come with an organization and some people which are saying, let's look again. We have nature, we have heritage. Let's try to test other solutions.
Industrial profits are short term; they don't last. And the iron gates, to me, are a perfect example of that. Anka, this is some of your work. Now you're with the working with the shad and curing and smoking with Delta Mar.
Yes. Delta Mar, yes, it's Delta Mar. It's a brand.
So even though the sturgeon are gone, we still have the smoked shad, which is an architaste. I'm not going to, please pronounce it in your language, because I'm not even going to try that.
Scrumbie.
Scrumbie, okay.
Scrumbie. This is a spring fish that came from the Black Sea, go up on the river. It's the same like sturgeon. Go up to put his fish roe up on the river, just to continue the life of the cycle of the life.
How healthy is the fishery? How is the fishery doing?
Just put the nets around from the part to the river.
Right. No, I was saying not how. I was like, how are the fish? I mean, the sturgeon are endangered. How's the shad as far as the health of the fishery?
It's like in this moment from December to February, that all fishermen that stay home preparing their tools for starting the spring season. And
Is it
when it's like questions every year, how will be this season? Will be a good one or a bad one? If it's good one, that will be good catches.
mhm,
The price will be slower, you know.
okay,
If it's the bad catches, the price will be higher.
right,
When I discussed with my father, he said that he'll prefer that the catches will be slower, that the price will be good. So
okay,
it's
yeah,
no,
all
depends.
right,
But when the catch is not so big, the value of the fish it's another value, because the people wants to eat this fish, maybe traditional way to eat, um, to go in Danube to eat that the villages home prepare them to
okay.
eat this fish, smoke it or marinate it.
And you say now, with fishing on the decline, tourism is so much more important. And Eugenio, you have both middle and lower Danube tours. Talk about your work with these tours, and please post some links to them in the chat so people can know how to come on your tours.
Okay, but unfortunately in Italian language. Well, more than 10 years ago, with your colleagues from Slow Food International, I started traveling along the Danube, researching, studying, and in order to identify the let's say good practices related to sustainable life models, not only connected with the food, but also with the culture, with social life. And after a couple of years, we firstly established a network. And again, not only farmers, not only small-scale producers, but also historians, archaeologists, musicians, writers, with this aim at preserving and promoting what I call the human biodiversity of the Danube. And then the next step was we started here in Serbia with this 8 days slow cruise with an old boat, which is a cultural monument of Serbia. And we sail slowly from northern Serbia, from Novi Sad to the Iron's Gate, and we discovered this incredible world of the Danube through meetings with the slow food communities, with concerts, literary coffees, and so on. In the last 4 years, I added, let's say, a second chapter to this project that has a name, Sailing Along the Flowers of the Danube. And this second chapter was devoted to the Danube Delta, with more or less the same approach. I think that what I learned many things from, let's say, from the side of the slow food communities. I think that this sustainable tourism is very, very important, not only because it's a sort of economic support to these small farmers who are trying to preserve all the recipes, all the varieties of products, etc. But has also a cultural impact, because bringing curious tourists who enjoy this local food It's a sort of transfer of self-esteem to these people in order to convince them more and more not to give up.
And you spoke about, especially in the middle Danube, the slow food arc of taste, red plum, and then this drink that I'm not going to try to pronounce that is now Presidium, that you bring people to these farmers and sample this.
Yes, it's slow food community, a convivium, and also a presidium, not along the Danube, is in Šumadija, the central western part of Serbia. And this family, Veljovic, 15 years ago, they started revitalizing this old variety of plum, this Crvenaranka variety. And after, yes, almost 10 years, it became a presidium, and we organized this beautiful dinner at their farm in this amazing wood in central Serbia. But also during this tour, we have a lunch based only on cabbage. The cabbage was brought here along the Danube by the Germans who emigrated at the end of the 18th century under the time of Maria Theresa. And this convivium, this slow food community is promoting again this local variety of cabbage.
Yeah, as a shout out to Mirjana, that's her in the lower left-hand corner, and she wrote quite a bit on the titsia, the mayfly. And even though you may not catch it on your cruise, this just shows to the biodiversity of the Danube. I've seen many documentaries on it, and the Danube is also considered Europe's Amazon. It's just an amazingly biodiverse, and much of it is still wild. I mean, that's one reason I want to get there, because I have such a connection to the Mississippi, but the Mississippi is industrialized from top to bottom. And there still seems to be some areas of the Danube that are still wild. And I'm so thankful that y'all are doing this amazing work to preserve it in such an important river. So now for those, this is a conversation for those of you that have joined us. You can use the chat function. Paula will read your questions, and I'll open up to the panel just for what else they would like to share.
I would like to just open very speedy a window of understanding. Some years ago, I have had the occasion to visit, to be in Belgium, and to go to the channel, to the Atlantic, and I was there in Ostende. So if you see the west of Europe at Ostende, and then you go to Sfântu Gheorghe, St. George, at the other end of Europe, it's an amazing experience to see where the Danube ends and go into the Black Sea and the other side of the Europe. So for someone, it could be a very interesting comparison. And I felt many emotions seeing Danube going into the Black Sea after seeing the other side of the Europe. And second, the Eugenio is using, and his team, a kind of reverse engineering, because people are have altered their cultures, and when you bring them a new perspective and people which are saying your food is right, your food is important, your heritage is important. So sometimes one of the solutions, it could be this type of changing of the paradigm through reverse engineering, telling to the people you have something valuable, keep it like that in your context, and people will come here to live and see those things. Indeed, there is a counter opinion on this, that people like us or like others are looking to keep people living as in a reservation. But it is not about this. The approach could be philosophically said like creative traditions, keeping what is valuable and bringing up into the present time, and do not do all the thing to the garbage. You know, the houses, the type of building of the houses, the nature and so forth, because we are wanting, I say we, in the modern times. So we need to find solutions and to propose people those solutions which are empowering them to live in that context.
I agree. We're seeing this more and more, and Paula and I have been talking about how this type of work, tourism, can really help people like Anka, you know, to keep these traditions going. And the Slow Food International Group, you know, we like to travel, even though we're not traveling right now. So for those of you that are part of our community, our international network, when we do gather again in Torino, or when we gather in Genova for Slow Fish, think about, we always want to do a side trip. This is just an hour and a half flight over the Alps, which when you're in Torino, you're looking at the Alps. Go to the other side of the Alps. There's the Danube, and have Eugenio take you on a tour. Go visit Anka, eat her fish, because this is what we do. And I really want to invite that we start having this network connect more and go to these places and tell people, because this is important work. And I can't wait to when we can travel again to go explore this amazing river.
Well, we have some questions actually regarding the vineyards. There is somebody asking if the vineyards use waters from the Danube to irrigate, and how this irrigation impacts generally the microclimate of the regions around the river.
Well, I'm writing something to Vic. The idea is that in the south of Romania, along the Danube or in Dobroja, there is a huge issue with the lack of water. And for many years, the businesses, the small entrepreneurs, farmers, were complaining of lacking access to the water resources. It's an issue because of the climate change, because of the fact that in many places in Romania, the protection forests were cut down after the fall of the socialist regime. The climate change makes, by some research, the type of climate will go upwards. So here in Romania, probably will plant fig trees, you know, in some places. And we have had an irrigation system, but it was dismantled in the 90s because it was a memory from the socialist era, you know. So after some decades, the people have found that it was bad because they have stolen the cement, the pipes and the pipelines and whatever for the water. So it's a grave situation for some areas. It's a cautionary tale. Like always, we have destroyed the irrigation system 30 years ago, and now we have needed, and we do not have money to put it in place. Still, there are some preoccupations from the public authorities to have some money from European Union to put in place, and they're building and constructing some irrigation systems, but it is not enough. The tragedy is that in some places in Romania, they will go out from some agriculture businesses.
Well, thank you, Tiberio. Well, we don't have more questions right now. We are very close to finish this webinar. But before we finish, I would really like to thank Miriam, because I know that I see her on the public, but she was working with the whole team to make sure that we will be able to make this webinar. So I think we should give her a big thanks for all the effort that she has put with it. So hi, Miriam, you are with us also here.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks.
And well, I think we have navigated the Danube very well. We were very lucky to have all of these speakers with us, and I'm very curious to come to a point in time where we can go together and explore the Danube physically. Until then, let's keep in touch. It was very nice to meet you here. Thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and your stories that are very inspiring. So that's all from my side. I don't know, Gary, if you want to add something, or the other speakers want to share something with us.
I just appreciate this opportunity to virtually explore the Danube during this pandemic, which we didn't get around to talking about, but I think we're all tired of that. And I do look forward to coming, hopefully in the years to come.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
So thank you very much also the public. Also thank you to Alessandra Villa and Michele Rumic that are behind the curtains. So right now, guys, it's up to you to put the video to close this webinar. Thank you and
Okay.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye,
The future
Gary.
of
Bye
our
all.
planet is decided at the table, in our daily food choices. What do we know about what we eat? How do we choose? Where do we buy it? You can make a difference and contribute to a future where everyone has access to food that is good. Eating must be a pleasure for everyone. We all have a right to food that is healthy, natural, fresh, and seasonal. Clean. Being aware helps us to choose food that is good for our health and the health of our planet. Fair. Knowing our food means making choices that are fair to us, to the producers, and to future generations. Slow Food has been working for over 30 years to defend biodiversity and fight the climate crisis by promoting good, clean, and fair food for all. Support Slow Food. Let's act together for the common good. Go to donate.slowfood.com/en and follow us at terramadreselunadelgusta.com.